I remember last time we met, you were talking about during COVID, and you were just handing out iPads.
Oh,
car after car,
Chromebooks.
just like a bag of chips.
Just had that conversation today because, of course, all the funny things that happened, like the woman who pulled up with her window cracked this much and was talking this loud. And every time you'd step forward, she'd go, "Get away from my car! Get away from my car!" Just screaming at us. And we're like, "We can't hear you." You know. And we had all had stories about difficult people during that time. So yeah, that was fun.
You should come out with like the window smash glass just to keep it interesting. Welcome back to the Roundtable. Today we have in the studio Patrick Thiem. He's the Director of Technology from Millcreek Township School District, and our returning champion, Brian Marshall from Velocity Network. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Dang. I was not going to talk over him, and I ruined it in one.
Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about your role, but you're also stage. You have a stage presence?
I do, actually. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but
Yeah.
I'm going to be in Cannon's production of the Spelling Bee the first weekends of April as Vice Principal Plunge.
Wow.
So yeah, I do a little bit. Actually, that's where Brian and I met 100 years ago. Was doing shows at the Erie Playhouse.
Yeah, that's amazing. And after I found out, I was like, oh, of course, because you're just I find you to be a natural.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So how did you get into, so we're going to talk about our principal topic today is AI and the student view, the view from your side of the fence, the staff, technology folks, or I'm sorry, teachers. Because my oldest son has a lot of opinions on the use of AI, and we all do. So this will be interesting to see where this goes. But what got you to where you are now at Millcreek?
Well, I have a degree in music education from Penn State, and I taught for 3 years down in Meadville and then became assistant coordinator of technology in 2000. But at that time, I wasn't up against people with degrees in technology. There wasn't such a thing. I sent my portfolio of what I saw was wrong with technology and education, and they liked it. And I remember sitting on day one behind my desk going, what am I doing? What do I even do here? I have no idea. And then I kind of got hands-on experience just doing a little bit of everything. And then Millcreek hired me in 2007 to be the Windows expert because they were all Mac, and has since now almost converted completely over to a Windows environment. And last November, I became the director of technology.
So an early takeaway in that intro, I picked up that you're really old.
God, I'm ancient. I'm decrepit. No, yeah. I've been around. I've been in education now. I can't even do the math. A long time. I think I'm coming up on my 26th year, finishing my 26th year.
Wow.
Interesting. I think it's interesting too, because really education was at the forefront of sort of, I'll call it the COVID mess. Like businesses shut down, but they all kind of could work remotely anyway. Like people had technology. It was totally different for education. Like we shut down and we were suddenly in a world where, oh, we've got to come up with a plan. And people like you and the people before you and I was sitting in these meetings and we're coming up with, all right, okay, we've got to do something quickly. And quickly in education, means something. So we've got to come up with a plan. They're going to do this remotely. All right, well, we don't have enough devices. Now we got to procure the devices, but now we got to get them the devices. And
everybody needs the devices.
Right, it's got to be one-to-one.
But I mean, everybody, every school district, every child in the nation needs a device.
So now you're fighting other places to get those devices. So the devices that I wanted might not be the devices that I can get. I just really bizarrely just ran into some wireless access points that no one would ever buy. We won't mention what they are on this, but now it's just like, you definitely bought these in 2019, 2020, right? Like that, because there was no Wi-Fi. Right, because now all of a sudden we were converting. I can't tell you the number of places that we went in, dropped fiber, and put Wi-Fi in gyms because they wanted separation of students, like at the Y. So the kids had to do remote but the parents had to go back to work. So they're doing remote work at Millcreek. They're doing it from the YMCA, but the YMCA only had, like, you work out there. They don't have access points for 200 students or 500 students. So now we're putting high density access points in this gym. Well, there were only so many to go around. So you were buying brands. It's all of a sudden these brands that always stayed on the shelf, suddenly they were very popular because they were the ones that were available.
Well, I remember watching the NBA finals, and they had that big teams. I don't know if anybody watched the finals during COVID. So they were in this basically
the
the
right.
bubble, and they're on the court, and there's all these screens of fans behind, like, the sideline. No one's in there, but virtually they were there. So in a weird twist segue here, like, it kind of fueled some of the AI-ness elements that we're seeing in technology, like with Microsoft Teams and the ability to pick up on a voice and do the transcriptions. And I feel like COVID, and that we would have got here anyway, but I feel like COVID put such a bright spotlight and investment in these tools and technologies and automations. And
Yeah. Well, we in the school district, we had been having conversations about becoming one-to-one with the students. And it was a goal that we were aiming towards and having conversations to get there. COVID just made it go really fast. Like, COVID made just jumpstart all of that and said, no, we're doing this now. And to talk about what you're talking about, yes, I mean, it jump-started not just that, but it jump-started the need for better remote learning capabilities, which then pushed Zoom to improve, which, made Teams come out faster, which it kind of jump-started everything. And, as human beings, we meet needs, and AI has come out of the need of, what was lacking during that time.
So then I think of, I'm going to rewind the clock a little bit further back, but the Apple Watch and how it became a wearable computer. I thought I had mine on. I guess I don't. Sorry. But it was, so then I think in terms of oh yeah, always got a one up me.
Samsung.
Ouch. But you can cheat. I'm going to go right there. So I'm wearing this computer, I'm in a test, and I have a device before it was widely known that I can cheat. Instead of writing in the margins of my notebook, and so then there's this remote learning and taking tests, which turned into they got to be proctored, and I got to have 2 cameras so I know that you're not staring at a screen, and I'm sure you got a billion examples, but when you think about AI, and there's a lot of benefits, of course, but how do you wrangle that horse with students and education? And my son calls it the dumbification of America. With the, so you're just not going down to the library and doing manual research. I'm going to tell ChatGPT I need a 10-page essay on pick your topic. With I don't even know if they do bibliographies now.
Mm-hmm. They do.
Do they? Okay. Mm-hmm. And boom. Yeah. And now I can. Where do you go with this?
I just want to say the dumbification, I get part of it, right? I do think that we will have worse writers. We'll have people that are being able to create content on your own is going to become more difficult. It's going to be easier, but it won't be your own. Right, it's going to be something that it pulled from somewhere else. AI doesn't generate anything, right? It's got to go pull it from somewhere. At the same time, the idea of going to the library and pulling the books to do the research to figure that thing out, that's not an AI new thing. I can't tell you the last time I stepped into a library. Like when I got the Encyclopedia Britannica on a CD and could load it into my computer, I stopped needing the books on the shelf, right? And then this World Wide Web came out, and I could start looking out there and finding things. And then Google made it so I didn't really have to know how to ask for something. I just have to kind of basically let Google go find it. ChatGPT or any of these AIs have just ratcheted that up. They've said, you don't even need to know how to ask the question anymore. Just kind of tell me about what you're looking for, and I'll go to all the places and pull all that information for you. I don't think it makes you stupid to want to collect all that data from all of those places. It's disingenuous to pass it off as your own.
Sure.
Right? To say, I did this and did this thing. Well, no, you didn't do that. But no more than when I wrote my Mount Vesuvius, paper, did I know any of those facts about Mount Vesuvius? I got them out of the encyclopedia and then I just wrote them back down.
Well, there's a million different places we can go with this. One of the conversations that I had recently that I really enjoyed is we had a gentleman come into the school district and ask the question, student gets an assignment to write about the life and times of Abraham Lincoln. Student goes to ChatGPT, asks ChatGPT to provide all the information about Abraham Lincoln that it does. It takes that information, it writes it up, sends it back to ChatGPT and says, check my grammar and my spelling. It does that, and the child turns the paper in. On a scale of 1 to 5, is it cheating? And you sit in a room of educators, and you ask that question, and you will see a range of answers from 5 to 1. It'll be all over the board.
Interesting.
So then the next point is, what's the difference between that and a child who's got a parent who's involved? And he sits down with the child and says, here, this is what I have on Abraham Lincoln. This is what I know. Let me pull this for you. Let me pull this for you. You write the paper. I'm going to look it over. I'll check your spelling and grammar, and I'll give it back to you to turn in. AI levels the field for kids that don't have that kind of support at home. It does.
Yeah. And there's a cram element to it. Like, I got through the courses in college that I could give two shits about. It would be the night before cram session and just memorize, hope I retain it.
Regurgitate.
Yep. And then get it out of my head as soon as possible. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's an element of that.
I don't know. The argument for is it cheating or not? I don't know if it's cheating or not. I don't even know where to put it on the scale. But I do think there's an argument for when it does all of it for you. Did you learn any of the process? The hope is with the parent, helping you pull. Now you got to write this differently. You're learning something along the way. If it's just I'm uploading it and it's spitting it back, I'm uploading it, spitting it back, and I can't explain it out the other side. I do think that becomes an educator issue where we're going to know this is what's going to happen. So I can't accept just a written paper as being the end of what this is. I need, yes, you're going to supply the written paper, but everything is now going to be done orally too. So now we're going to do this and we're going to sit down. Tell me about Abraham Lincoln. What did you learn? Well, I don't know anything about Abraham Lincoln. Well, we got a problem. Because the problem isn't that ChatGPT told you everything about it. It's that none of it went in here. Yeah. Like that if we're going to become well-rounded and better people and be able, look, why do we go to school? Right? Just to be able to learn how to do things and be able to become educated. The only way we become educated is by actually retaining some of that, cramming notwithstanding, right? But you have to be able to bring it in and put it back out. I think as an educator, it ups the ante. You're probably going to have to be in a spot where now I can't just take a written test as being the answer. It's going to have to be something else, or I have to start asking you questions about it to see if you can answer them.
So I'll be the old man a little bit here. I think of old school, and to capitalize on what you illustrated, you go to the library, you find a book, and you're regurgitating what you found on paper. Are you really learning anything? But I did consciously have to walk my ass to the library, figure out the book, find a place in there. Like there was some concerted effort and motivation, not grounded in a chair doing stuff. Like the least amount of physical effort and activity. Like, so that's old man cynic speak. I don't know where I was going with that, but
well, we have this conversation all the time. We talk about, should we be teaching coding? Should we be teaching coding? Because right now I can go to ChatGPT and say, write me a code. It does A, B, and C, and it writes me the code. Why do we need to? Well, we have to teach coding because that information still has to be put in. That information, I mean, it's all out there, but it still needs to be understood and corrected and learn.
Yeah, or do we need to teach coding not because I think...
You're talking about application development coding?
Sure.
Yeah.
But you can
or any language.
You could take coding all the way down to like the stuff they do with the Legos with kids and the robotics and all of that. That coding is important not because something else couldn't just write it, but it's because it trains your brain how to think that way. So should coding still exist? Yes, for that reason. Should I be encouraging my student to go after to become the master coder? Probably not, because no matter how great your student is, a push of a button is probably going to spit that code out better and faster than the smartest of smart.
Well, so kind of the world I live in, and I'm watching companies I work with do the Copilot specifically. Business Central, I'll get really granular. So Business Central, ERP, SaaS. I need to add a field on this page, and I need it to be a drop down and blah, blah. You articulate what you need, it spits it out. Great. I don't have to pay $275 an hour to have someone do it or train someone internally. I just had it coded for me. I have seen, now I say this knowing it'll get better, but at some point it starts to compound on itself, and you still have to understand what was being written because you're going to ultimately have to support it. Can you be completely beholden to Copilot to say, hey, this doesn't work exactly right, here's why. And then it does another iteration. Well, now there's all these interdependencies of how this works. So now you have this giant plate of spaghetti. Maybe it will continue to increase and grow and strengthen, I'll call it smartness, where it will maintain itself. And if it is a plate of spaghetti, who gives a shit? It works, But I do feel like there's a limited use of it, but like I heard you mention, Brian, content creators. If I have a team of 5 content creators, I bet you probably only need 2.
Yeah.
Let the models, the large language models do it, and then you final to do that's the sanity check, and
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where everything is. We had talked before we started about, the fears of AI, and go back and look at the invention of the calculator. Go back and then look at the invention of the television or computer, and how everyone said it was the end of the world and how it was going to ruin us. And there is a lot to be frightened of in AI. There isn't a ton, and I'm sure we're going to get to more of it. But there's a lot to be frightened with AI. But it is another tool that we have developed that we just have to figure out how to use correctly. And I think that's the key. We just have to figure out how to use it correctly. And for an education standpoint, we have to teach it correctly. It is possible as a teacher to to make an assignment that is AI proof.
Sure.
I can say to you, give me a 10-page paper about you. You can't go to ChatGPT and say, write about me. Now, I can't. There's nothing I can do. I can proof it with ChatGPT, but there are ways to make the assignments so that it's not possible to use ChatGPT.
Like you mentioned the calculator, which is a great example. I debate this with one of my partners all the time. Like, I look at AI as a true job killer. I'm going to go there. Now, we can say, well, that's what, the car, took away the ponies.
Right. Well, the steam shovel took away the guy digging the ditch by hand, right? But nobody's lining up to want to go dig that ditch by hand. So when the AI is taking out the manualness, right, as humans, we are constantly inventing ways to not have to, like, I don't want to go all the way to WALL-E. You brought up old school. I thought you were going to the movie. Like, my son would be very happy if I went and I pulled up the movie WALL-E, right? Like, I don't think we need to go all the way there where we're sitting in recliners and laying about and doing nothing. Like, that might be a fear of where it ends up. But as humans, we've always strived to have something else do that manual thing, whatever that thing is. So people don't code because they like to code, right? You code to get to the end of, the code is the means to an end, right? The end is the product that's done. The beauty is writing a beautiful piece of code and making that happen, okay? And there are people that are good at doing that thing.
So my rebuttal, that's why I love this exercise. I feel like it's an interesting topic. So we're calling out historical use cases, just like the lean for manufacturing. That's manufacturing. That's it, not the global economy of the service sector and financial accounting. And calculator was very specific. AI is everywhere. Sure. Every function, every service, everything. And the world is full of mundane stuff to take care of. That's why I tend to think this is different. I mean, we are a growing population, and we are increasingly automating more and more and more.
The assembly line.
The assembly lines.
The assembly line.
Yeah, that's a real example.
That's a real example.
And it impacted employment for that very specific niche in the global economy. AI is everywhere. It's everywhere.
So let's just say the AI replaces all of those things. So what? You do something else. Like, you'll always find something. What if we run out of things to do? Well, what if we run out of things to do? If the AI has figured out a way to produce all the things, like, we do things because we need to do them, right? You got to flip that around. Like, why am I going to work? I'm going to work because I have to work because there's a job that needs to be done. If we somehow if AI managed to get rid of all of the jobs, there'd be nothing left to be done, I think everybody would be happy.
Business owners would be very happy. Stock shareholders would be very happy. The people who are trying to pay their electric bill, not so much, because what are they going to do?
Right, but they need to survive in order to buy the things that company needs done, right? Yeah. So let's not get all socialist and all communist in here, but let's be honest, without the people at the bottom getting something, then there's nothing for you to. So I have this big business that does the thing, and all of my robots make all of the things for whom to consume.
Ooh,
or who to purchase.
Big brain Brian. Like, so I, honest to God, like, that never crossed my mind, ever, till right now, till you said that. I'm like, holy shit, that makes a lot of sense. Like,
someone's going to want to buy it.
And how can they buy it if they're not making money? If they're not making,
There's got to be some way that the money trickles down to them, whatever that thing is. They can't.
See, I'm always smarter.
If it's just billionaires selling to billionaires, it's going to be a very short conversation.
Yeah.
All right, that's interesting. All right, so back to education with AI in your world. How do the people around you take to it? Like I'll give you one example. Like, is the intent to eliminate student access to technology except when they're learning? So that phone, put it in the locker. If mom needs to get a hold of you, she can call the front office. I remember those days.
We're back.
Are you back?
We're back to that.
Okay.
No phones. The phones stay in the locker.
So is there town halls and pitchforks over this from parents?
Some at the beginning of the school year. But what we have found in Millcreek School District is that the kids are better behaved.
Of course they are.
More focused.
Yes.
And the need to get a hold of your child isn't as great as you think it is.
Yeah.
We don't have, knock on wood, it hasn't been.
We've survived for a lot of years without needing that constant tethering. And I mean, when we say things are, the things that are bad, the phone is bad. I mean, the phone is awesome. The phone does lots of great things, but our subservience to the phone and our lack of control of how we do that, and that hit of dopamine that student gets, and then especially in a young mind, that feeling of looking and seeing and that fear of missing out, and all of that stuff.
The ADD TikTok. Like, I have family members who love TikTok, but okay, so so Pat.
5 seconds, man.
Right.
It better entertain me.
Zing.
It
zing.
better entertain me.
So I'm trying to picture having focused time in the classroom for 45 minutes. Your brain's been rewired. That if you can't do this shit in 5 minutes, I'm out.
Yep. Right. And in 5 minutes, 5 seconds.
5 seconds. Sorry.
That's to me why Twitter, that thing is the worst thing that's happened as of recent. I find it infinitely entertaining.
You're saying Twitter, you meant TikTok.
I meant TikTok. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I meant TikTok. We can go into X and that being the same kind of issue.
That shit's Twitter and always will be.
Same kind of issue. But it's that shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Not it's any one of those things is the one, because they've all been making it smaller and smaller and smaller. But the reducing of what we enjoy to such a small amount before we move on to something completely different, it does rewire the brain. It does make us want it differently. And, we can jump into our theater here. People come to the theater, they've got to turn their phone off. And I do think there's a level of relaxing that happens there. But I think there's a whole crew of people that, thank goodness that Playhouse does things where they bring students in, etc. Kids don't even watch half-hour TV shows anymore. We just say, they're going to rot their brains, watch TV. They don't watch TV. That TV's not a thing.
Bluey's 8 minutes.
It has to be.
An episode of Bluey is 8 minutes long.
That's terrible. And it needs to be, because now they're conditioned to everything being short. How do you sit through a 45-minute play? How are you going to sit through, first act? We got to come back? What, are you nuts?
There's more?
What?
And it's all about the dollars. The reason it's 5 seconds is you're going to get more content and more sponsorship.
Now, you did
for the wrong reason.
You started the question very interestingly, and I want to kind of go back to that, is how is AI affecting around us? I'm part of a regional technology group, which is all the technology directors in the area. We call it the IU5. It's all the area. And we have conversations all the time about AI in the classroom and where it is. We are all scared. Every single one of us is frightened to death over this. And some of us are burying our heads in the sand and saying, we'll block it to all of our students and we'll figure it out later. And then there are some that are saying, nope, we embrace it. Our teachers are using it. And there are some in the middle that are going, we let them use a couple tools, but we don't let them use it is everywhere. And the understanding of the problems with AI are also all over the chart. They are not consistent. We have these conversations and we bring up specifically the data that AI collects and what these companies do with the data. And as a school district, my main job is to protect the students. I have to protect the students, whether that's from inappropriate content online or from their personal identifiable information being leaked out. And so one of the things that we're starting to do is, okay, we're going to look at this product. Well, now we're going to tear apart their terms and conditions. We're going to tear apart their acceptable use policy. And we're going to see, what do you do with the data? How is it collected? How long do you hold on to it? Are you allowed to sell it? What happens if your company gets sold?
I've kind of white flagged that with, I feel like anything I do is just out in the ether.
So that's anything.
You don't care.
So that's anything you do. That's not anything your student is doing at the school
Oh,
by
no,
a
I get
school
it.
sanction
It is
to
different
do.
level.
So that's why this is so frightening. And it's, I think people, to Patrick's point, they're thinking of the student's going to cheat, blah, blah. That's the least of the concerns. The much bigger problem is, what is happening with all of the data that's happening in that classroom, and where is it going to, and how is it going to be harvested, how it's going to be used? When the tool is free, it is only free because it can be monetized in some way. Correct. There is nothing that's free, right? Correct. I have free Google all the time, right? I look up all kinds of stuff. They've never asked me for a check. I'm absolutely giving them of all of my data as I'm typing it in there. I realize that as I'm putting stuff in there, they're keeping track of me so that they can go to an advertiser and say, Brian seems to look at a lot of things that have to do with this. Let's start giving him a lot of ads that look like that, right? Yeah. In my cybersecurity training, I always talk about looking for the perfect pair of purple pumps, right? And so if I'm looking for those shoes, I'm out there searching. I know those shoes are going to show up. I'm not mad about it because I don't want to pay Google. So I'm okay with that. As the administrator of a school or as somebody that's in charge of other people's privacy, I can't be okay with that. I have to understand what's going on. Some of that's educating the people as to what they're sharing.
Right. So in those conversations, we talk about, we pound our fist on the table and we say, no personable identifiable information. And we say those words over and over and over again. We never define it. But we pound our fist on the table and we say it. And then the teacher A will go on to ChatGPT and say, here's a list of my kids and their birthdays. Make me a nice calendar.
Huh.
And then we don't know. We have no way of knowing they've done that. And now those child's birth dates and names are out there on the internet. And we don't know. We have no idea we've broken protocol.
Well, and that's, so our work, and Brian, you touch a lot more companies than we do. But we take the assumption people are going to bring AI into the workplace. If you can try to stop them, you're going to fail. So we look to position and track them in Copilot, because if we deal in the Microsoft universe, Microsoft takes security very seriously. Copilot helps guardrail that. I'm not going to say it's perfect. Maybe it is perfect. I just can't say that. I don't know.
They do a really nice job with security. Microsoft does. And out of all the vendors that we have looked at recently, Microsoft is the one that kind of spells a lot of that stuff out that I talked about.
Okay.
But what does Copilot cost?
Yes.
It's not free.
It's not free.
No.
There is a free version, but not.
But you
back to
you can only use it inside their ecosystem where you're already paying, so you can feel there's a level of comfort that goes along
Correct.
with using that.
I think that's key, because ChatGPT is free. Well, it's free. Why is it free? All right,
Because they're building their language.
Exactly. And you mentioned Google. I can't tell you the last time I've used Google. I am so beholden to the benefits and the comfort and the lack of advertising with ChatGPT.
Lack of advertising
For now.
for now.
For now. Yeah, closing comment? For now. But I do get it in a gotcha sometime. Like I'll type something and there's a typo, and then part of its response, well, in reference to shoes, also known as horns, like if I typo horns, it's like, shoes aren't also known as horns. Like you're trying, so, but I gotta tell you, like just for DIYing and things around the house, it is gold to me. Gold.
Well, I think one of the things you and I spoke of when I was on the podcast last time was when we had the gentleman that did the training that talked about not discrepancy, the words escaped me, bias. When the AI has bias. And the one example, I don't know if I told you this, but the one example he gave is he sat down and he typed in who is the highest scoring, who has the most goals in soccer as of this date. And the answer came back, this gentleman and this gentleman are tied with this many goals. And the next question he asked was, what about this woman? And ChatGPT said, well, yeah, this woman has way more goals. But if you're talking about men, it's this gentleman and this gentleman. And the gentleman typed again. And he said, when I asked you to give me the person with the most goals, why did you assume I meant male? And ChatGPT says, because most people are looking for this answer, and this is what I gave you. But if you want to know who's scoring the most goals at this point, it's this woman. And that's a reflection on us, because when we do our Google searches, when we type in who has the most goals, we're looking for that male name.
Yeah. I can't fault ChatGPT for that. It's almost like...
No, it's not ChatGPT fault. We're the ones that put that in there. We're the bias.
We are the bias. That's right. But there's also a lesson in there too, and it's something that I think is important for companies that are experimenting and getting into the Copilot space. I'll go back to Copilot, prompting. So that's a lesson there, and I think that's a great example. I would love to incorporate in a future training is that very thing you said, because the prompt then would be inclusive, male or female, blah, 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 blah. Right. Now, but the thought or the question you're posing is meant to imply any gender.
Right.
But
because of our bias and how we normally do things, the male sports figure has gotten more attention than the female.
A colleague of mine, because ChatGPT can do images also. He used to be DALL-E, DALL-E. And I can say, give me an image of blah, blah, blah. So he does a channel, and he said, give me a picture of a person that's being, I forget the words, but it's at night, and there's a person who's scared because of the crowd around them, something like that. So the image it generated was a woman surrounded by black men. That was the image that was created. And back to biases and
stereotypes and imagery, et cetera. It's, show me a picture of a boxer. You've got, Mike Tyson, like, what that typically looks like. There could be some skinny little whatever that is a great boxer. That's true.
Okay.
That's not what we
all right.
think.
So I like that example. I think it takes the emotion out of it. But that example, show me a boxer or show me a basketball player. I'm going to see Michael Jordan, LeBron James.
This is somebody tall. Right.
Somebody tall.
There are short basketball players, but if you said, show me a basketball player, you wouldn't expect to see somebody 5'3".
But it's context. Like, okay, is it a stereotype answer that AI has generated? Back to our topic. Okay, but I'm not gonna take personal offense to it.
Oh, I don't think anybody said they're offended.
No. The point of that wasn't that it's offensive. The point of it is just that it is using our bias to generate everything. Everything is slanted because of the way we think and the way we type things in. somewhere there's web pages that have the name of the image is hacker, and it's a guy sitting in his basement with a hoodie and dark sunglasses and looking menacing, sitting at a computer.
Yeah.
And there's a million of them.
Right, and that's what has fed that thing. So when using the AI, we have to understand that because it's just you're using this tool. This is a crazy analogy, but it's like using a chainsaw. A chainsaw can kick back. I can't stand in a way that the chainsaw, when I'm using it, will come and cut my neck off when I'm using it. When I'm using the AI, it comes built in with these biases. I can't assume that what I'm going to create is not going to have those biases because that's the nature of the tool.
One of the things that we've been talking about is trying to find products that will keep your data inside, right? So as I'm dealing with students, okay, this product, Microsoft's Copilot, everything's contained. Everything's contained. Well, the problem with everything being contained is you're only getting what you put into it.
Yep, it only knows what you know.
So if I have an elementary school where I have an AI that's contained, all the results are going to be that boogers taste good. Because that's what it's going to be fed.
Yeah. Well, and in our business use case, if like good uses of AI in the workspace don't require a conglomerate of global information. Like, summarize this meeting, please. I've been off vacation for a week. I have 1,000 unread emails. Summarize them for me and give me action items that I have. These are very specific use cases that are tremendous time savings and benefit.
So go back to your group and everybody being scared, which I love that comment. Like, this, what we're trying to figure out and trying to attack. I understand that, everybody's scared because it's an unknown frontier, right? So anytime in our entire history, anytime we walk into an unknown frontier, there's got to be some level of fear that walks into that. There's also a great opportunity for education, and the educators are at the forefront of this. Have you done anything yet, or are there plans? Like, how are we educating our educators to educate our students about the good use of this and not spreading their data? Because you might be controlling it inside the classroom, but the second they leave, they got access to all the things.
Yeah, great question.
That's a great question. When I talk about the fear, I'm talking really about the data leakage. We have plans going into next school year to address just that, because we understand that, we are asking our teachers to teach something that they themselves can't comprehend. So we're going to do our best next year with trainings in the beginning of the year, trainings throughout the year, to have more discussions about AI, to identify what personable, identifiable information is, and teach the teachers about how to better use it.
Yeah, and it's constant education, right? It's
constant.
This does tie to cybersecurity, right? Anytime, and the biggest fighter for cybersecurity is not your antivirus, it's not your anti-spam, it's educating the people to be able to identify what the attack is and what's going on. We put all the other guardrails in place. If the person at the end of the day gets duped into doing the things, it's
Trojan
really
horse.
hard to protect against that.
Once they're in, they're in.
It's back to the pesky humans.
Right. If they could just sit around like Wally, sitting around in chairs, we'd be all fine,
Yeah.
right?
All right, gentlemen, thanks for interesting discussion.
There's so much more.
There really is. This topic lives forever. But great to hear how it impacts what you do and the populations that you touch and impact. And of course, Brian, thanks as always for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.